Yo! What's up, everybody? It's Orange Bloods Live. We're back. It's Jeff and Chad. It's been a hot minute. Not since June, I don't think. So glad to have the A-team back together again. Everybody like, comment, subscribe to the page. We appreciate it. It's good to be doing a show with Chad. It feels like ages. Jump into the specs chat. We do appreciate that. Shout out to our sponsors at Texas Card House and Hijack Poker. We'll get a little in-depth about what they do here in a little bit. But Chad and I haven't done a show in a hot minute. I feel like I've already said that. I'm so flustered, Chad, to be back with you.
So glad. Hey, good to be back. Good to see you. Good to see the chatters and everything. Yes, Tex guy, I'm back. Good to see you.
They thought I fired you last week.
Did that right? That rumor was going around that,
every day it was Chad got put down like the family dog did when I was a child. They just told people are like, that's what my parents told me when Petey got put down. He just went away on vacation.
They thought you old yellered me and you said you sent me to a farm upstate. Is that what it was?
They thought that you got put down. They thought that you got sent to the train station. There were some Yellowstone references this week.
Okay.
Yeah. Jesus, guys. Orange Bloods is relaunching. We're on a new website. We didn't put anybody to pasture, just so you know.
Yeah. Hey, it's happened my whole career, Catch. Something about this, the radio world before and now the YouTube world. The vacations, the time off, it just gets magnified for some reason. Like it's still it's a week, okay? It's still a week off, but it feels so different when it's like fans watching shows and following it. And so, yeah. And I understand I did have a couple that were kind of close together. It was family stuff and Catch was good enough to let me do it. I've even got a couple more days coming up this week because my kid's in college and we got an orientation we got to go to. So no rumors this week about, it happening again. But yeah, so
the thing is, like, I end up doing these solo shows, which are just different.
Yeah,
they're not bad, and I enjoy doing them, but they're just different. And so it's weird when you slide into something that's weirdly comfortable, but it's like it's not as much fun.
Well, it's an opportunity for you to really get your ideas out without me constantly interrupting and getting my thoughts out. So I know that's comfortable for you occasionally.
Because I fucking never get any time to talk on this show. No, I was curious, Chad. Like, I stumbled out of the gate. I don't know where to begin. There's a Felix Ojo conversation that we're going to have, right? Where does Texas go next with the money? What do they do in light of, you weren't here on Friday, but like I did that show and we did the reaction to Ojo's commitment to Texas Tech and the fallout of that as his agent did some Drew Rosenhaus stuff. Man. And was like, look at me and look at what I did. And if you want a deal, I can get it for you too. That happened.
Is that like when Rosenhaus was across the room calling Willis McGahee? Is that what he was doing? Doing some of that?
Texas gets John Turntine, which really the next 24 or 48 hours feels like an under the radar. It's probably the best offensive line commitment Texas has picked up since probably since DJ Campbell and Kelvin Banks went bang bang after the Oregon fiasco where their head coach goes to Miami and those two guys decommit. I guess DJ Campbell wasn't committed. It was Kelvin Banks and Cam Williams, but you know what I'm saying. It was a big deal, and I don't know that it's been getting the big deal treatment. As you come back, where do you start? What's your initial reaction to what happened? You and I have done so many shows where those names have been mentioned. Before we get into the what next and what does Texas do with the money and what is the fallout of this conversation, what's your initial reaction?
I mean, from the Texas fan perspective, I think you got one of those two. We've been talking about Ojo and Turnin so damn much. Do you get one of them? Texas fans would have been crushed, I think, if you don't get either one of them. And again, we're assuming these hold until December. So I think that's where I start.
Well, Ojo's apparently signed the contract.
Right, but it's also it's just kind of this player that Texas Tech has become in the NIL world, and there's just different tiers of this thing. We all understand that, but the tier they're living in, it's a bold place to be. They're taking a shot. Yeah, it's well done, Sandman. Well done. That was a good one. I also liked, hang on, this was pretty good too, Cats. This is like a musical. You and I are music fans. That was nice. A sheep at the wheel is pretty good.
Well, I thought this was kind of cold-blooded.
Yeah. Now that's a whole different smack.
Damn! I promise Chad didn't get the ponder treatment.
Yeah, no, that did not happen.
Which I told you always feels bad if somebody makes a ponder comment now because she was the former queen of the show.
Yeah.
And then I made a pregnancy joke and she saw it.
Yeah.
And then I don't think I ever recovered from that, Chad.
No, it's a tough thing to come back from. It is. I think Texas fans coming back from the Ojo thing will be easier. I really do.
As it turns out, I think you're right.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely that way. But I think, Texas Tech needs the respect of kind of what they're trying to do right now. It's a big get. I was surprised to see it. I'm following from a distance, with the time off, watching you guys talk about it and seeing the reaction. And my eyes bulged a little bit where I'm like, really? Tech? It's not going to be Ohio State or Michigan if it's not Texas. No, it's Tech. And that it's a wild move. We'll see it seems like you pointed out with the agent, feels like Joey McGuire is going to be able to hold on to that. Can the Ojo thing just stay quiet on the Texas Tech part? No more visits and all that stuff. That's one part of it for me. And then to what we'll talk about today. If you're a Texas fan and Sark calls you up, Brandon Harris calls you up, the guys that are trying to figure all this out. Hey, where should we spend this money? That's kind of what we're talking about today. And if a Texas fan today says, okay, Ojo is just gone, which for you, that's how we have to think about it, right? He signed a contract, NIL's out there. That's not going to reverse itself by December.
That's done.
So you can't say spend the money on flipping him.
Yeah.
Let's take that off the board. What do you do with the money? And first off, let me ask you, do you have a sense of what button Texas was willing to push for Ojo? And was it anywhere in that $5 million for 3 years thing that the agent put out?
I think, what's funny is, so when that got out, and look, the agent's pretty goddamn specific. Contract had been signed.
He did everything but show us the signature.
These were the details.
Yeah.
And I don't think he sounded like a guy that was worried that somebody will later come back and correct. Here's what happened.
No, he felt confident.
Tech has not done this before. I promise you, for the days leading up to this, there were people in the Tech football department that were like, oh, hell yeah. When this happens on Friday, we're going to shock the world. And people are going to know Texas Tech football has arrived. What they didn't count on, I'm convinced, is that the lawyer or the agent would do what he did. And it was just, you're screaming at every kid that's recruited by Texas Tech. If they haven't asked for money, now they are.
Yeah.
And I was joking earlier today, if you're like the best player on the team, your negotiations sound a little bit like this. Hey, Joey, coach, I get it. I'm not a 5-star left tackle. I'm not sitting here asking for 5.1 over 3 years. I don't think I'm worth that. But you know what? I'm a 1,200-yard receiver on this team. I'm worth something. How about this, coach? How about 75% of what you're giving the guy that hasn't played yet?
I thought you were going to go Eddie Murphy raw. Half, Eddie. Can I get half of the $5 million?
And that works too.
Right?
And I think what they then needed, and I think everybody just needs to be hip to the game. That kid got what look, because here's the thing. I think Texas would have paid that kid $1 million. That's not crazy at all.
So three over the 3 years for sure, right?
Yeah, that's what the Tech spin on this ultimately was that they gave him Brandon Baker money. Brandon Baker was getting about 750-ish. I can't say that's exactly what he got.
Right.
But I think within a ballpark of, let's say, 200 grand, I feel safe about that. Because I would say I had heard somewhere between like 6 and 750, where, I don't know, somewhere in that landing strip. That was 2 years ago costs. They did a lot more for Justice Terry. Like, they did enough for Justice Terry that Georgia was like, we can't do that. So I think Felix Ojo is a Texas commitment today if the money that Tech is trying to claim is the money that he actually took, was actually the money that he took. I much, much more am likely to believe that it's the 5.1 over 3 years, and that Tech just doesn't want that out there, because that's bad for business. That's what Texas was worried about in December with the team in the middle of the season, was that if they went into the portal and got a guy like Max Clare, the tight end that went to Ohio State, they were worried, oh my God, the going rate's $1 million. If we give this guy $1 million, nobody on our roster makes $1 million. What do we do when a roster full of good players goes, whoa, this guy hasn't bled, he hasn't sweat, he hasn't worked out, he hasn't even signed a letter of intent, he's not a captain, he has like all these things he hasn't done, and he's getting paid more than I do. Tech wasn't ready for that. Tech was not ready for every dude in that locker room to go, bet. We ain't mad. We now know what you can get paid at Texas Tech. I want some of that. And Tech is learning the lesson that Tech has had to learn, which is, hey, you want to be real careful about the headlines that you're creating with your NIL. And I think one of the reasons, remember when Sarkisian got pissy at Kirk about what I think was some quibbling over some pretty small details, $40 million roster,
right?
Kind of the attitude about it. What that was really about is that, like, every time a headline like that comes out, you probably got about 40 guys on the roster who have agents and parents who are like, you said that the school was in poverty and that it was only going to be 30 million. And you said you couldn't pay us money because there was a limit. And now Kirk Bowles is saying there's 40 million. It's always about the guys that don't yet have it. It's not about the guys that do. And I think Tech learned that they won't ever make that mistake again. They won't. Like, they learned, oh, there's a price that comes with that headline, and we both reap the rewards and paid a price. They'll be paying for months. They'll get to December. They will have players on this team that have big years this year that are like, give me the Felix Ojo money or I'm out. Yeah. And that's the brave new world they now live in.
Especially when you talk about that agent detail. It's one thing to have him commit and have the picture go out of him in the gear catch. That agent didn't need to do that. It didn't need to be that. It didn't need to feel like the candidate, because this is the same agent as the pitcher in softball, right?
I don't know. That I'm not sure about.
Okay. But even if it's a different agent, the agent for that softball player, remember, put out her new deal right as she's getting ready for game 3 against Texas, which I thought, my God.
Well, I know why the agent did it.
Right. Like, she doesn't have enough to think about. But for the player, all that added pressure and publicity. And in this case, to your point, it's the added stuff Tech gets off of that. It's like, can't we just enjoy the fact that we got Felix Ojo? No, we've got to have all kinds of kids, agents, and parents contacting us about, oh, okay, so that's the bar now. That's the money.
You told us we were your most important prospect.
Right. Did you do realize what my son does, right? My son's coming off the edge trying to crush quarterbacks. My son is your next quarterback. My son is going to go catch balls for your next quarterback. My son does that. It won't
and
stop.
A lot of it is, hey, we are not greedy people. just give us 10% of that $5 million contract. We're okay. We just want 10%.
10%. That's even less than that's less than half.
We don't even want what the agent is getting.
No.
And you know what? It sounds like a certain kind of way when you put it like that.
Thank you, Colby. He says it is the same agent.
Thank you. And look, it makes sense. And look, my reaction when that happened was that they knew the question was going to be, why the hell is this kid going to Texas Tech? And it came across to me like, you ever seen a guy or a girl, for that matter, get married to somebody and you're like, it's like the movie Knocked Up when it was like, wait a minute, you're engaged to him?
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, well, we're pregnant. It's like, oh, okay.
There's a reason, right?
It makes more sense now.
There's a compelling reason.
It felt like the announcement that Ojo had signed with Texas Tech and the contract announcement felt like a we're knocked up announcement. Because there was like, how did that just happen? And before Texas fans could even ask, wait a minute, we lost a kid to Texas Tech. How did Oh. And the O part has been the most interesting part of this, Chad. I'm fascinated by this concept that as soon as this story became full of context, that a lot of Texas fans' reaction were not, how did we lose this kid to Tech? A lot of the reaction was, maybe this was a good thing because I don't know if that's the best way to invest money.
Right.
And that, I think, is the first time. We did this with Fasusi a little bit last year.
I was going to say little. It sounds a little familiar, but not to that degree.
Just a little bit. And honestly, people weren't ready to have the conversation then because I think for a lot of people, it felt like, well, that's not why Texas lost. They didn't lose Fasusi because of the NIL money.
Yeah.
So
because in that one, correct me if I'm wrong, they were willing to go a little higher than OU, right?
They did.
Yeah, they were willing to do that. So that's a different. This one isn't like Texas was in at like 5.5.
Correct.
Yeah.
But I think when it was over with, it was like, that's a lot of money. And I think even before I did an article this weekend where I did a little bit of a deep dive on the history of players with his physical profile at his ranking, like I was just curious, how many basketball player type guys hit?
Yeah.
Because Trevor Goosby's hitting right now.
Yeah.
And it's going to be in vogue. We're just going to hear so many guys where it's like, this guy's just like Trevor Goosby. And it's like, well, is he? Is he? And how many Trevor Goosbys are there? Like maybe this happens all the time and we're just discovering it. As it turns out, does not happen frequently. In fact, did you read that, Chad? Did you read that part of the column that I did?
Yes.
The only guy essentially in the last quarter century.
I remember him.
The last guy in the last quarter century with essentially Felix Ojo's physical measurables, ballpark, if you will, that actually hit at a high enough level that it's worth remembering all these years later. Luke Jokel.
Yeah.
I did not have. Look, I remember Luke Jokel, but I don't actually remember thinking of him as like a basketball player type. Like
I didn't either. That's a great. That's not how I thought of Luke Jokel either.
I guess I had forgotten how tall he was.
Yep, me too. If you'd asked me, like when I saw that name pop up, I'm like, Jokel's that tall? I just didn't remember.
He's literally the example, but nobody thought of him as the example.
No,
it's only all these years later where just naked numbers. You're like, oh, 6'6", 285. He was kind of a Cam Williams. He was not.
Yeah, it does explain why when he got his hands on you and stretched his arms out, you were kind of at the sidelines. Like, I mean, the dude was badass when he was going.
It's also interesting that in the NFL, that guy never really turned out as anything.
True.
And that The best case example of the type that we're talking about actually doesn't have an NFL prototype that you would point to and go, if it all works out, because that's what Trevor Gooseby is. Gooseby is going to be, I think, but Gooseby then has to be, Jokel was a first-round pick. Gooseby can do that. It could be the next guy that becomes.
Then he's got to hit.
And now he's got to be a good NFL player because that hasn't happened yet. So interesting. So if you're Texas, what would you do with that money? Now, Chad, you were not on the shows last week, but I had this conversation in real time. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. We were having this conversation a little bit because the answer from the people that I spoke with, it was like, well, if we don't get Ojo, by the way, I called Felix Ojo, Felix Jones 400 times last week.
Is that right?
I know that you will appreciate that. There aren't enough Felixes that we've covered.
Damn.
So it makes it easy to say Felix Jones, but he was a Cowboy. So it's a double whammy. But I called him Felix Jones 4,000 times.
Hey, don't feel bad. Same exact body type. Felix Ojo, Felix Jones. Practically the same guy. Their mothers couldn't tell them apart if you just did shadow
Felix Jones's name in the chat, and I wasn't even aware that I had done it. I was like, I called that guy Jones, didn't I? My sources were like, we don't care where the money goes. It goes on somebody that makes the team in 2026 better. And that, to me, is – I asked Anwar this question on the Overreaction Monday show. And I don't know if he misinterpreted the question or ignored it or had something else that he was already thinking about. And the question I asked him that I didn't – because his answer was yes to this question. So I guess he answered the question. He didn't answer it the way I wanted him to answer it, so it was wrong. No, I wanted him to answer it from the Texas side. And he answered it from the Tech side, which I understood. The question is, and I'll ask it from an Aggie perspective, because I think the Aggies are in this discussion as well. If you're the Aggies and you are in the business of winning now, how much are you willing to invest in the future on what might be deemed as a long shot? There are the Kelvin Bankses of the world who are 5 stars and can show up and are expected to play right away. Those guys really are far and few between. That is not what DJ Campbell was. It's not what Brandon Baker was. It's not what Felix Ojo will be. So in this new world where programs are going to have about 14, 17 million, somewhere in there, of revenue sharing that they'll be able to spend. And then everything else has got to be corporate partnerships. That's not as easy as, hey, we're just going to come up with something that's going to pay you $600,000. It's not going to be that easy. How much do you invest? Because before you answer, Chad, I don't think there was a consensus inside the Texas football decision makers. I get the sense that Kyle Flood and Steve Sarkisian wanted Felix Ojo. I think there were other people who were like, I don't know that that's the best way we should spend money. We should not have $1 million of 2026 and 2027 money set aside for a player that only might be good in 2028. And I don't know that that's wrong at all, actually. I don't know. These are questions that are being asked for the first time. So let me ask you, as an A&M fan, Texas A&M, let's say Felix Ojo commits to Texas A&M on Friday, and the agent puts out a press release that says Felix Ojo, instead of Texas Tech, is signed with A&M, $5.1 million over 3 years. And it's not crazy. Mark Bowman, the 5-star tight end, was reporting that he was getting 2.8 per year at USC as a tight end.
Yeah, that puts him above that spot, right?
A lot above that spot.
Yeah.
So if you're an A&M fan and you hear that you guys have done that with Ojo, the number one prospect in Texas, How are you reconciling the good and the bad? Like, what is going through? What should you be thinking? Because I think this is a question that Texas fans have been asking themselves, and there's a lot of trepidation baked inside of the answer.
Yeah, and I think that, I mean, even those two, like all three, I think are in different spots: Texas, Texas A&M, and Texas Tech for where the answer goes. By the way, thanks to 500 of you and more piling into the Specs chat. I will answer Catch's question after I tell you a little bit about one of our great sponsors. We got a lot of them on the show. One of them is AV Consultations. The number today, as I'm counting, is 54. 54 days till kickoff, Texas fans. If you want the setup that you've always dreamed about, if you want to make sure the NFL Sunday ticket looks great, that Arch looks great as your quarterback, that all the college and pro football looks good, that the baseball playoffs look awesome, get the setup you've always wanted. Get the speakers set up the right way. Make sure it is set up perfectly. Make sure it's set up safely in case you got small kids in the house. You don't want them pulling on wires and cords and messing everything up. You want to make sure everybody enjoys this football season. Do it with AV Consultations. 255-8678. They've been doing it since 1988. They can also do indoor and outdoor lighting, security systems, the computer systems in your house. They can make sure it's all running smoothly. Check them out. 255-8678 or avconsultations.com. So, Catch, I think let me start with you asked me from the A&M perspective. So I'll start with what I would think A&M wise. I don't know that there's enough patience in college football right now for head coaches that you could wait that out with Mike Elko. I don't know if there's enough patience. So from A&M's perspective, I would say you probably should spread that money out somewhere else because you haven't built the team yet that would allow you to cover for that time. For Texas Tech, I get totally what they just did. Texas Tech can be a little bit of an outlaw here and do it. Get something Texas wants, brag about getting something Texas wants, and just figure out the rest later. But for Texas...
Real quick, just big chat. Yes, the answer to this question is yes.
If not, it's something you think Texas will... Yeah. Oh, sure.
Everybody is. Nobody's doing one-year deals. Trust me, that does not fly in recruiting. My
question for you, Catch, to set up my Texas thoughts, because you just kind of referenced it. As I read your 10 thoughts for the weekend, and I encourage everybody to do it. It's always great. This week was phenomenal. Great stuff on this topic.
This is one of the best columns I think I've ever written.
It was bad. If you love a good dug-in conversation that nobody else is having, if you love this NIL discussion and you're a Texas fan and you're trying to figure out where do you stand versus where do your rivals stand and all of that, go up there in the upper left.
I felt like an Aggie fan would have learned a lot from that section.
Absolutely. Aggie fans, Tech fans, OU fans, USC fans, go up to the upper left, click that QR code, joinorangebloods.com today. So my question to you, Catch, is if I was a booster for Texas, Georgia, Ohio State, Bama, and I'll throw Oregon in. I'm a big-time booster, like a big dog, big check booster. How am I supposed to read your information? Am I reading your information? Like, how am I supposed to react as a big-time booster? Is it, I better get ready to write some checks? Or is it, we've set up a new world where some of it gets paid like this, some of it gets paid with big corporate folks. I'm not a big corporate person, so I'm now out of the way. How am I supposed to look at it if I'm a BMD for Texas?
Okay, first of all, you've asked a great question. It's not what I thought you were asking.
Okay.
So when I'm done answering this question, circle back around to what I thought you were going to ask, okay?
Okay.
Because I have talked to some billionaires this weekend.
Okay.
I've talked to a couple of check writers.
Okay.
But that's not what you asked me. I think the thing that they're thinking is this is really complex. Mm-hmm. Like, I think there's an awakening now to this is unlike how schools have put together successful programs has ever existed before. And I think, because I've noticed this on Orange Bloods a little bit today, I think people are waking up today and they're realizing, do you know what it absolutely will not work in college football in 2025? A meatball football coach who just builds on a whim and doesn't know how to count. I don't know who that is, right? I don't want to go Ed Orgeron. I don't want to be like, but the idea that back in the day, you could be Bobby Bowden and just good old boy it. And look, he was a great coach, but he collected. Nick Saban can't exist the way that Nick Saban used to exist. You can't just accumulate as much talent as you want to without some issues. Alabama and Georgia 5 years ago had almost twice as many consensus super blue chips on their roster in 2020 as they have in 2025. In 2025, the economic cost of what they had is so astronomical that I can't wrap my head around how they would pay for that. But what I expressed in an article today was each one of those is tentatively worth about $1 million. Mm-hmm. And if you've got 40 or 50 of those guys on your roster, then you have like 40 or $50 million.
Right. And that's where I'm trying to get back to Ojo in my thinking. If I'm that Texas guy, if I was the Texas.
The answer, though, that millionaires, Chad, were saying this weekend was, I just want to spend my money on what helps win now.
Okay.
And there were everybody I talked to was flinching. Now, the thing you got to remember, Chad, people were still freaking out about that Rivals performance 2 weeks ago.
From Ojo, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So they were like, whoa, people just got it in their head. He's so far away from playing. We can't even see how close he is to the field. So there was just a whole lot of, whoa, wait a minute. We're going to put how much? Because I talked to a person that literally pays for these players. He's part of the guys that writes checks. And he was like, hey, man, wake me in December. Find me a badass player, and we'll pay him that money then. And he can block for Arch next year. But that's not what the coaches were thinking. That is not, I don't think that's how Sark, that's not how Kyle, I don't think those guys were thinking that way. I think they were thinking, this is a guy that we get. He's a number one prospect. We spent our entire careers trying to get guys exactly like this. And I think for the first time in the Sarkisian era, there were alums who write the checks for these things to occur who were thinking, this isn't one we should write. And I think there were some people who were kind of happy because Texas lost, because they won't be the ones that make that economic risk. And I think that is one of the things coming out of this situation. Now, what you ultimately answered, Chad, or you were getting to, whether or not you knew it or not, this weekend is a perfect example of, for years, I keep talking about the importance of the general manager position in college football. And people, and Anwar and I get into this conversation all the time, and I don't mind bringing up Brandon Harris's specific name here, because the general thought is that Brandon Harris is one of the top 5 general managers in college football. I mean, be hard pressed to look at where Texas is at positioning wise and not give him an immense amount of credit. Okay. However, think back to when Brandon Harris was hired a couple of years ago. Okay. Mm-hmm. Think about what the needed and required skill set on paper would have looked like 2 years ago. It does not look like the same required skill set that exists in 2025. So I was asking Anwar a couple of weeks ago. I was like, hey, kind of a weird question. Does Texas have a capologist? Now, why was I asking that, Chad? I just wondered, in the NFL, they'll take an allotment of salary cap money, right?
Yep.
And they'll break it down to a science, how much you devote to each position. And they're like, how much should be on young guys and old guys, and how much money is committed. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Not even the general manager of an NFL team is the capologist all the times. That sometimes they hire some guy from MIT to do nothing but crunch numbers in the cap, and then that guy works for the general manager. So I was like, Anwar, does Texas have a capologist? And I asked Anwar the question. I was like, someone who does this. And he said, I think that's Brandon Harris's job. And I went, really?
A lot on his plate.
I was like, he does that too?
Man works hard.
There's no way when Brandon Harris was hired that they could have known in advance that this is a skill set he needed to have. Hey, Brandon, what experience in running an NFL salary cap do you have? Oh, I'm an expert at it. I'll be the best in the industry. So what I was told is like, yeah, Brandon Harris does this. I was like, well, who devises the strategy for how much money goes here? And I was told every single NIL deal goes through Brandon Harris. That's what I was told. That's what I was told.
Okay.
And I was like, Jesus, that guy really is special at what he does. But the thing I'll continue to say is he has a job, and this is a sport, and it is headed in a direction where the amount of sophistication involved in the decision-making for every player, for every prospect, for every piece of money that's being, this is not what Nick Saban was doing.
No.
This is not what Barry Switzer was doing.
This is not the stuff of what Savage was doing for Nick Saban.
This is not what Matt Brown was doing at Texas.
No.
This is, honestly, it's even different than what the guys in the NFL have done. And even in the NFL, they'll ask a question where it's like, well, we're taking a guy in the first round who's an offensive tackle. He's 20 years old. We think he's going to need 2 years before he gets on the field. Even then, they talk in a way where it's not 10 or 20% of the salary cap. They don't talk in a way where the upside of a hit might be as low as 20%. Like, they will talk, we will draft this guy, and in 2 years, he will be a starter, period. Otherwise, we don't make the pick. You're not in college athletics in a position to really take anybody and say, that's the guy. If you're Texas, Ohio State, Georgia, Alabama, you can't take a left tackle, no matter how good he is, and say, well, that's the left tackle for the next 3 years. What do you mean that's the left tackle? Everything that we're investing goes there. Well, what happens if? Oh, you can't ask if. There's no recourse for if. Well, what if he gets hurt? No, what did I just say? There's no recourse. He's the left tackle. He's the running back. He's the quarterback. Texas can't do that. We're seeing Texas Tech do that with Felix Ojo. No one else is playing left tackle. Can you imagine the fuss that will be made if he were to lose his job, lose the competition to some other kid who's a freshman in his recruiting class?
No close practice.
DJ Campbell didn't win the starting guard job out of camp. Cole Hudson did.
If Ojo has a bad first practice in Lubbock, every other practice gets closed forever.
Imagine in 2022 when the team's going through an 8-5 season, people weren't really happy. They didn't win the bowl game. Like, it was better, but it still wasn't what Steve Sarkisian was hired for. Imagine if we had all known how much DJ Campbell got in a contract, and we watched an entire football season go by where one guy's getting paid like $1 million and the other guy has no NIL money, but the guy with no NIL money is starting over the guy that's making $1 million. We would have talked the shit out of that. Yeah, it would have been unavoidable.
It sounds like an NFL conversation too. When you have those quarterbacks that are still on their first contract and they're overperforming, or you have a player, let's say it's a running back that is well, it's crazy because he's only making like 800,000 this year. He was a 5th or 6th round pick, but boy, this next year when he gets his deal, like those discussions are already there. It's gonna feel like an NFL discussion for those fans. For those fans that don't want it to feel like NFL football, look out.
And I'm fascinated by the process. I'm fascinated by what goes into, because one of the things I've been trying to do is recruiting is the most pseudoscience of all the pseudosciences. It is, let us convince you that this thing that has a really low probability rate of succeeding is the greatest thing that you've ever seen in your entire life. 4-star running back commits to the Longhorns. How many of those guys hit on the average? Oh, like 12%.
Where did the cheering? No.
Say, well, how many of those guys enter the portal? Oh, like 70%. Wait, 12% hit, 70% portal. I hate to ask, but what about the other 18%? Somewhere in between those two things.
18%.
So, I'm at a point, Chad. I feel vindicated because I feel like I've done these shows for years, way before you and I reunited, for years, going back, honestly, while Herman was still the coach. I've been pointing to, we're headed to an era where the most important job in college football is the general manager.
Right.
It is who's making the grown-up decisions. Because you know what you can't have? You can't let a coach make an impulse decision of, let's just offer Felix Ojo half the national debt.
Right.
Because there are, and you know who has to deal with the fallout? The general manager. He's the one that's got to talk to the agents. He's the one that's got to renegotiate the contracts. He's the one that's got to balance all of this. The toughest job in college football is the general manager job. What I have laid out is that the way Steve Sarkisian runs his program is that he does so much that I think it's too much. I'm contending now that you've almost got too much for two people.
Yeah. He needs an assistant. Brandon Harris probably needs an assistant to do what we're talking about.
And they got to get to a point where they're not egos. And I'm not saying that they do have egos, but man, I swear, Chad, every time we have one of these conversations on our show, and I basically I say things like, Brandon Harris is a rock star. Brandon Harris is one of the best guys in college football at the general manager position. But then I'll say, like from a scouting perspective, I don't know that he's like a super scout. And then it's like, oh no, he watches film. It's like, well, that's not what I mean.
Here's what it is. Here's what it is, Catch. I'm going to make a reference to a show I know you love, and I know you haven't dug into the latest season, but maybe Brandon Harris is the Oliver Platt character from The Bear, and he needs a computer. There's another man that stands there with him.
Yes.
And they literally call him
the computer.
And when he's trying to go through the personal human side, the computer gives the hard target X's and O's, black and white stuff. No, it's this. What I'm saying is this. That's maybe what we're talking about. Man needs a computer.
Again, I've said for months now, I thought, you know what? We got to stop talking about the general manager position because someone has that job. And it's like, you got to understand that what we're talking about is not questioning whether or not the guy who has the job should keep his job. Like, that's not the talk. The talk is the job is evolving into something that it wasn't. And this is at every school in the country. This is not like a Texas deal. This is not. Every school in the country has to be asking, like, what are we doing at our general manager job? Because what is it that we're now asking? Here's what I do know. I don't want to ask Steve Sarkisian to do this. Steve Sarkisian.
No doubt.
So there's two things that need to be said. Steve Sarkisian should not be like unilaterally trying to figure out, hey, how much does the wide receiver position get committed to out of all of our pool of money? How much of that is under revenue share? How much of that is under NIL? How much of that is per class? Juniors, sophomores, freshmen, incoming recruits. What is the breakdown of what we're allowed to do? Sark should not be the computer in this discussion. Okay.
No, he should be transferring the information that the computer figures out.
The other thing that we got to stop doing with the Brandon Harris thing is we got to stop expecting that Brandon Harris is Superman.
Yeah.
Well, who's going to move that building? Superman.
Superman.
Who's going to stop the bad guys? Superman.
Catch my cats in a tree right up there. Can we? Where is he? Do you have him?
Who's going to scout all of the players and make all of the decisions and count all of the money and decide all? Brandon Harris, Superman. It's like, God damn. Guys, do you know what we're asking of this guy? And I'm not saying he's not Superman. I'm just saying that there's got to be like a general acknowledgement that I can remember. I got my man, the bread man, Chad. I was really good at math when I was young. Like so good at math that I can remember when I got to the 5th grade at what was it? I don't even remember. Robertson Elementary School in Round Rock. My good friend, the bread man, he was in awe that I would get hundreds as a 6 weeks grade in math. I was good at math. Man, by the time we got to high school,
not good at math.
I never made it to trig.
Yeah,
I
right.
never made it. It just gets to be a point where it gets harder.
Yeah.
And just because I was great at it when I was 11 didn't mean that when I got to be 18, I was still getting hundreds in math. It gets harder. And that's the thing about the general manager position that I keep pointing out. And I just feel like people get mad at me because they think I'm slamming one person. And it's like, no, I'm acknowledging that sport-wide. And I think the point that you made is so critical. What Texas and Texas A&M and Texas Tech all need are different things. The general manager for all 3 schools has a completely different job. But they all have to be experts in the same stuff.
Yeah.
And the same stuff is not as simple as, well, how good is he at grading film? I mean, that's part of it. And you do need to have a dope sporting, like scouting staff inside of all of these things. Just like you need to have a dope capologist, smartest guy in the room. You know how I know Steve Sarkisian isn't doing his own math? Because that dude is not like, who's the smartest arithmetic guy in this room? I have to believe if you ask who's the best play caller on offense, Steve Sarkisian would be like, I bet Sark has enough self-awareness to be like, who's the best money counter? I have an agent. I have people that I pay a lot of money to be that person.
Yep. All right. We do see some super chats here. We will start cleaning those out here in just a second. I feel like it's appropriate that you see this because one of our great sponsors is Specs. Damn near 700 of you in the Specs chat. Here we go.
This summer, when the sun scorches and sanity is one sweat beat away from collapse, a hero rises. Specs. Your cathedral of cold cans. Your oasis of cool.
A hero like Brandon Harris. By the way, ATX Bates votes for all the money from Ojo to go to Brandon Harris. Maybe that is the solution. All right, let's grab some super chats here. One more chance. You started it with a 5 spot. We'll start with you. Say Ojo ends up being equal to Gooseby. Not play year 1, key spot role year 2, and year 3 protect Arch / Dia. Is that worth 5.1 for 3 years?
Yes.
I would say yes, especially if you can cover the rest of it. But can you cover the rest of it is the question.
Because, I mean, if we're saying he's Gooseby, first of all, this is about to be Gooseby's 3rd year. So that's not what you're asking is not what Gooseby. I mean, No, you can't. That's not good enough. You're saying key spot role. So you're saying for 1 point. So for the first 2 years, you pay over $3 million.
Yeah. And is that how you would describe Gooseby last year? A key spot role?
Yeah.
right? That's okay. So he's laid it out there. Is that enough for that type of money? I would argue, Catch, if you want to be big time and be Texas, like we always talk about, could you do that and still cover the rest of it and have 25 or 30
if
or
you're
35?
paying that money, you're asking him to be what Kelvin Banks was. Period. It's the only kind of way. It's got to be, do you think that guy comes in and plays year one? Doesn't have to start.
But he's got to play.
But, they didn't know that about Kelvin Banks. They really didn't know, well, we'll just roll him out on the field, and from the very first day, he'll be the best offensive lineman in the program. Yeah. They didn't know that.
Is the one thing, Catch, that I think both certainly Texas
and
Tech.
He wasn't even in Austin for the spring. He just flat out showed his ass up in August and was the best player on the team.
Yeah, if Texas Tech, we know they'll make the argument that Ojo's going to be out there immediately. A&M would make a similar argument. A&M would make the argument that if they were going to pay that money, he'd have to get out there pretty quick, right?
He's not ready for that. Like you couldn't, if you're A&M, you couldn't play him. You couldn't. You would, the thing, you can't play a guy who's going to get your quarterback killed, who you're probably paying a bunch of money to.
Right. And no matter what, like you said, Tech's got to go with him right away. Texas, little different situation.
Well, I don't think they do, but I just don't. Look, if it's even, they got to play him.
Yeah.
If he's a true freshman and they've got a junior who's just better, well, then you play the junior and you let him grow up a little bit. But if you got a second-year redshirt freshman or a sophomore, and that guy's not any good, and you got two guys who really aren't that good, well, then you'll let the one that costs the money grow up and assume the growing pains. But, it's difficult. It's difficult because, look, that's what Tech did last year with Micah Hudson. Think about – this is actually let's think about what happened last year for a second with Micah Hudson.
Okay.
Micah Hudson came in off of a knee injury. So he comes in, he's hurt, he misses a lot of camp. He's not really fully available until the season got started. Except what happened when the season got started, Chad? The season got started.
Yeah.
And he had players. He had players that were good receivers who were productive. And he was trying to win games then. So what he was not willing to do was to play Micah Hudson at all costs at the expense of guys that he thought were better players, better, more proven, experienced players. So what happens at the end of Micah Hudson's season? Everybody talks about him like he's a goddamn bum. I got super chats today from people who are like, what if he ends up sucking like Micah Hudson sucked? And it's like, well, that's not what happened with Micah Hudson. Micah Hudson might end up being a total badass this year, and we just may need to slow our roll a little bit. The guy was hurt. He missed training camp. By the time he was ready, he kind of missed his window to earn his stripes. Tech wasn't terrible. They actually liked their wide receivers, so they weren't trying to get those guys necessarily off the field. Like, it was a little more complicated than young guy didn't play, he sucks. But Micah Hudson didn't have an NIL contract that was world famous. And I would just counter that if last year Micah Hudson's $5.1 million contract was as well known as Ojo's contract is going to be well known, I think you got to pay that guy. I think if you get to the end of the season and you paid a guy $1.7 million and he didn't play, you have to answer one really – there are two questions and one will apply if you're the head coach that you have to answer. And, like, you can't treat it like it's no big deal. Chad, you know what the questions are. There's two. One, you want to take a guess?
This is if he plays or doesn't play.
If he doesn't play, if you pay a guy $1.7 million this year, let's just say arbitrarily to play wide receiver, and he made $1.7 million and he doesn't play, what are the two questions that you have to ask the coach?
Yeah. Did you spend your money correctly, and can you assess players correctly?
Yeah. Why did you give this guy $1.7 million?
Right. Why did he deserve 1.7?
And if the answer is we thought he was badass, touche, why didn't you play him?
Mm-hmm.
It can't be really more complicated than that. And I don't think in 2025, look, in 2024, Joey McGuire can get asked the why is Micah Hudson not playing question. And he can kind of blow that off and say, coach's decision. We just are going with the guys that we think give us the best chance to winning. In 2024, 12 months ago, that probably gets okay, fair enough, right? Think about the Texas media. If Anwar asks hey, Micah Hudson hasn't been playing a lot, can you walk through like the decision-making process for what needs to happen before he needs to get more playing time? And if Sarkisian, you know how Sarkisian can get? Mm-hmm. He's in one of those moods where he gives Anwar the stink eye and just says, I'm the person that decides who the playing time is, and I don't think he's ready, and that's that. Is anybody asking a follow-up question?
Probably not.
But if we all know that guy's getting paid $1.7 million,
there should be.
Doesn't Kurt Bowles at that point jump in and go, Coach?
Maybe.
Back to the wide receiver question that you answered earlier.
Maybe.
What's it like in 2025 to have to make a decision where that has to be considered? And like, if you say, well, I haven't given it a lot of thought, I don't let that distract me. Again, you cannot answer these questions in the way, you have to answer these questions the way the Dallas Cowboys head coach gets asked questions when they've drafted a first-round pick.
Yep. I was going to say, these are NFL questions.
And he's a corner, and he's the backup corner.
Yeah, because there's a difference, Catch. In the old days, if one buddy turns to another during the game and says, how much are we paying this guy? It's like this nebulous cloud. But when a Texas Tech fan, to your point earlier, let's say Ojo doesn't play for games 1, 2, 3, and 4 this year, and Tech doesn't look great on the offensive line, the buddy will turn and say, how much are we paying that guy? And it's like a thing. It's in stone at that point. It's black and white. And you are talking NFL talk out on the plains sitting in Jones Stadium.
The guilt that, remember the night, I guess this is what I would say, and we can get close to wrapping this. Honestly, this is this food for thought for ages. Might carry us into SEC media days.
Yeah.
The night that Chris Sims got booed at Texas Stadium.
Oh, geez.
I don't think people apologize if he was making $2 million.
Oh,
God.
I think you're going to make it worse, not better.
I think we've gone from a place where traditionally the answer was their kids. I'm passing no judgment on this. I don't honestly know I don't know the right and wrong matters here, but I don't know that I know what it is either. But I've seen people this weekend say, hey, if a guy's going to make $1.5 million, he better perform, or I'm within my right as a fan to let him know. That is not how we've treated college sports. It's always been, hey, these are young guys, these are amateurs, even when we knew that wasn't the case, but we would, these are just young guys who are on scholarship and like they're not professionals. They are now. And I think we're in the infancy stages of how I think fans will now treat college athletes. But it's going to be uglier. What Felix Ojo will go through will be uncomfortable. And somebody's got to be the first guinea pig. And I'm afraid that his the guinea pigs can be guinea pigs in an assortment of fashions, right? Sometimes you can be a guinea pig. Well, what were you a guinea pig for? They just wanted to see that I slept okay last night. Did you? I did. I was a great guinea pig. slept 9 hours. And I was like, oh, what are you being a guinea pig for? They're giving me some new medicine. Oh, well, who do they give it to? They've never given it to anybody before. Is that a third eyeball on your forehead?
First time. First person.
You know, there's all kinds of guinea pigs in the world. I think he's going to be a guinea pig for ridiculously high paid prospect. And I don't know that the money's crazy, but the expectations for what he'll deliver on that money, if he's not a future first round draft pick, it will be viewed as a massive disaster. And as my work this weekend showed, in the last quarter century, there is one player from the state of Texas with his combination of size and recruiting pedigree that's been a first round draft pick in the last quarter century. And it was Luke Joeckel. And even the thing that we'd say about Luke Joeckel is he was a massive NFL bust. So I feel a little guilty. I feel like I'm part of the big reason why Felix Ojo's profile is what it is. Because I feel like I'm now coming back after the fact and I'm saying, maybe we shouldn't have built his profile up as high now that we know a few more things about him as a prospect that we wouldn't have known back in February.
All right, we've got a couple super chats that we are going to get to. ATX Bates, Jay Lee.
Hold on. You saw this too. You started Money B with a phenomenal chat.
Yep, was going to save it, but yes. Imagine Ojo gives up 3 sacks in a game and goes to a party afterwards. Fans are going to let him have it. Yes, Money B, we already live in a world where everyone is way too viciously mean for various reasons. Fans are going to think they have an extra reason to be mean. Definitely.
They will be going everywhere to get him in a gotcha moment.
Like, let's take it out of Ojo's world. If the left tackle at Ohio State misses a key block in the Michigan game and then is caught partying somewhere that night, what happens? What happens in Columbus? Y'all all know. You know. It's going to be nuts because they're going to know exactly what he's getting paid. And in this case, specifically with this agent thing, you know what Ojo's getting paid.
Hey,
so
real quick, Tennessee Longhorn says they aren't professionals, though, Catch. Money doesn't make you a professional.
By definition, that is exactly what it makes you.
Tennessee, what I would have co-signed with is when they weren't getting paid, but they were working in a professional sport, they weren't professional. But what Felix Ojo just did on Friday is pretty freaking professional.
Yeah.
He signed a multi-million-dollar contract to play at a location of his choosing, and an agent released a press release notifying us of the details. That's literally more professional than anything Chad and I have ever done.
It's pretty professional. Yeah, feels professional.
When Chad started working for Orange Bloods, he just went and made a post on Facebook about it.
I thought it was pretty professional, though. As posts go,
effective, Chad. Those are two different things.
As posts go, I felt it was pretty professional.
Hey, did people find out? They did. It accomplished what you needed it to accomplish, but you did not have a person that you pay money to notify the world.
Nope, that did not happen. That's correct. Yeah.
Just FYI.
Yeah, it did not happen. We'll grab those super chats.
No, when I started Orange Bloods Live, I didn't even do that for me.
We'll grab the super chats after we remind you. Hijack Poker is out there for you. Online poker in the great state of Texas. Go to hijackpoker.com. Get that app. Put it on any device you want. Get to playing. Get to that online poker. They bring us the show every day, does Texas Card House. If you look carefully, right up there in the upper right-hand corner, you see it, along with the Specs Rabbit, you see Texas Card House. Check out hijackpoker.com. All right. The super chats are right here. ATX Bates threw us one for $4.99. Do you ever see a scenario where the transfer portal becomes a quasi trade portal between schools?
No. I mean, we'll see situations where Ohio State and Texas take players from each other in the portal, but not because they worked out a trade.
Yeah, that'll be the next level, ATX Bates. If college football ever gets to that spot, wow.
Gonna need a collective bargaining agreement for that.
Yep, you're gonna need a little more, right? Gonna need a little more structure in it for that one. Jay Lee with a $5 super chat. If you are a team, I think it's a team. If you're a team like Baylor in the Big 12 and can't afford a full team of 5 stars, but can afford a few 5 stars every cycle, what positions outside quarterback would you want? I mean, it's easy for me. Blocking and tackling, Jay. I want an offensive lineman that can block like hell, and I want a defensive machine that can tackle like hell. It's the first things I look for.
I'm disagreeing.
Okay.
Mainly because I've seen too many Texas teams that have one great player at a position. If you're not quarterback, ultimately is the answer to this question, because if you have your quarterback, there's no amount of money you can pay him. It's worth what he's worth.
Right. So let's put a picture in people's heads. They know they've got
I'm going wide receivers at the top. Like, okay. I had to ask myself, who wins games?
Mm-hmm.
And quarterback's number 1. I'm going wide receiver 2, like a truly elite, great receiver.
Okay.
And I'm going edge rusher. And I think those are God, it's almost impossible. Just how many NFL teams have we seen have great single defensive play? It's hard. It's hard. We know that the premium positions in the NFL are quarterback, left tackle, and pass rusher. But I don't know that in college football having Kelvin Banks on your team means that you anything at all. So the question, I think, almost becomes, is there a Moneyball approach? And look, maybe some of this is, we go back to what Jim Nagy, the hire at Oklahoma, was made. There's a part of me that wonders if that's what's up their sleeve. That they know. Remember, we talked about it just from a pure talent standpoint of they're not shopping at the same stores as Texas and Georgia and Alabama, really. But I wonder if this is about quickly acknowledging that a high-priced position player isn't the way to go, that there's got to be a sweet spot, that the sport probably isn't even there yet, right? You're projecting when the revenue sharing kicks in and everything kind of balances itself out and players are this becomes a standard operating procedure. How do you work around that? I don't know. I think the answer is, Jay, that might be a trick question. And maybe the answer is there really isn't anybody that, if you try to build a team with just a few guys, you're going to fail. It's not basketball. And you couldn't have you couldn't do like in Blue Chips where it's like, we'll just go get Shaquille O'Neal and Penny Hardaway and, Calvert Chaney or whoever the hell was in that movie with them. And I forget, who was the white guy in Blue Chips?
God,
remember that guy?
Yeah, but I can't think of who it is.
Somebody answer in the chat.
Yeah.
Who was the white basketball player in Blue Chips? Can't have that guy, right? Because there's so many guys that if you were going to have $3.5 million rather than spread that out around 3 guys, you might be better off giving $500,000 to 7 guys. But this is all theorizing. This is what I'm talking about. These are the really tough things that I think the sport is going to have to to wade its way through. I don't know what to tell Texas Tech about the field. I know it feels dangerous. I know if they hit, I know that they'll have got a steal. But it feels like there's a lot of middle ground that we won't know how to talk about. And isn't that where we'll probably land in? And I don't know. I don't know what the right answer is. And I don't think they do either. I think they're guessing.
Yeah. By the way, big poke. Ray Allen is not the white guy in blue chips, just in case.
Now you're just going to make me look it up.
Yeah.
If you guys aren't going to type it in. Before I find out, Chad, anyone take a stab?
No, I don't. I've literally seen blue chips, I think, once all the way through. So I'm not coming up with his name. I see him. I can't come up with his name. Wait. Oh, here we go. Hang on.
If my
is
life,
this right?
Yeah, if my life had been on the line, I would not have guessed that.
Is that it? Matt Nover?
Matt Nover played the character Ricky Rowe.
Ricky Rowe. Yep. I would not have gotten that one either.
I don't even feel bad now that I don't remember him.
Damn. All right. That cleans up the super chats. We'll get buy or sell to you here.
All right. Hey, Chad, I'm going to give you an opportunity to save your life. Double or nothing.
This always works for me. Yeah.
You just lost your life because you didn't remember Matt Nover's name.
Okay.
From 1989 to 1993, Matt Nover played at one of the largest college basketball programs in the country.
Okay.
For your life, he played where? 6'8", 223.
Indiana.
You got it. You're living. You did it. You did it.
There we go. He's alive. He's alive. He's alive.
I think I would have said, I don't know what I would have said, but I don't know that I would have said Indiana.
I was battling between Kansas and Indiana, and I'm like, I don't think I remember him in Kansas. I'm going to guess Indiana.
Kansas. I could safely eliminate Kansas.
I'm going to guess Indiana.
I've been to Lawrence, Kansas so many times. I know that program pretty frontwards and backwards.
There you go.
But if you said Kansas State or Iowa State or Indiana, I don't know.
You'd have just kept, you'd have nodded there too. Yeah, that's fair. All right. No, I don't need the homework to watch it, Craig. I've seen it. It's just been, he did not stick in my brain. All right. I got that right. That means I get to keep eating and drinking. Let's start with the drinking, and that is Deep Eddy vodka. I had some Deep Eddy vodka on the week off. In fact, we finished off a bottle of lemon. We got a little cranberry mixed in with some stuff, did some cocktails with the pineapple, but we do not do it like they do out at the Deep Eddy Vodka tasting room. This is where you go for those incredibly well-mixed, awesome, smooth cocktails. Deep Eddy Vodka, the best flavored vodka out there. There's 9 flavors now. Get out there, have them make up those cocktails for you. See what I'm talking about. Thursdays through Sundays, make your plans, get your DD, get your ride share set up, do it responsibly, but have a great time at the Deep Eddy Vodka tasting room. All right. No super chats right now.
Chad, I gotta go.
Gotta go?
I do. We've gone along, and I have all kinds of stuff I have to do.
Man, this just feels like a good normal show, right? A little bit of show. You got stuff to do. You got to go. All right, that's cool. I'll wrap up. You jump out, but I am going to give you the buy or sell I had for you. I'm going to save it because it's one of the wildest buy or sells I've ever come up with, but we'll save it for later. We'll save it for another day. Okay, so then tomorrow we're still going. We're going back.
Back to the modcast. I'm off tomorrow.
Right, off tomorrow. All right, so I'll talk to you on Wednesday. Mr. Liverpool is going away. That's right. Jeff Ketchum, the boss, hitting the eject button. He's got things to do. He's got to go be the boss. If y'all want to squeeze in a super chat, you can do that before we close up. Got a couple more of our great partners to thank. Just want to thank you guys too for remembering me last week and even making some jokes about maybe me getting axed. Thankfully, I didn't. Thanks to Mr. Ketchum for not doing that. And hope you guys are enjoying the new orangebloods.com website after the independent decision. The website looks cool, looks slick, looks awesome. And please go to that 10 thoughts from the weekend from Ketch if you want to get into this money discussion. Boy, it's a wild look at where everybody is, and Ketch does some good estimating of kind of where teams are, and you really get the feel for how Georgia, Ohio State, Texas, Bama, and go ahead and throw Oregon in there are kind of in their own spot. And then there's this other tier of teams and what they're dealing with, and kind of how Texas Tech with this Ojo decision fits in. It's really interesting stuff. Money B says they were trying to fire you. No, they weren't. Well, maybe the chatters were. That's okay. Some people in the chat might have been, but maybe some people in the chat weren't. By the way, I said I wanted to become the new Anwar, where when I went on vacation, everybody wanted me to go on vacation because the commits just kept rolling in. But what happens when Ojo goes to Tech and Turntine goes to Tech? Can I get a little credit for the Turntine thing? And Kosi Okpala, he's a badass too, right? I get, but you don't hold the Ojo thing against me, right? I had nothing to do with that. All right, before we wrap up, let's hit another one of our great partners around here. Y'all know it's one of my favorites. It's Sinus and Snoring Specialists. Just went on this trip. My wife took her CPAP with her. She slept like a baby. I took the dental device that I wear every night. I've worn some kind of like dental device since like 2004. So good God, that's over 21 years now. Initially, it started with just the teeth grinding, kind of clenching. I'm a clencher when it comes to the teeth, not a grinder. And it went from that to a device that helps not only with the clenching, but it also helps with the jaw alignment and all that kind of stuff. And I sleep well every night. You can too. 601-0303 or go to sinussnoringent.com. I've told you, they've added another doctor to the practice there. Dr. Salvador was in California, over a decade of experience for him. Dr. Slaughter obviously is there at Sinus and Snoring, and he's got over 20 years of experience. So you just got even more experience in the building. That means more appointment times are available in the morning, if that works for you, in the afternoon, if that works for you. They also have recently started accepting the MOTA insurance. So if you've got that insurance, that helps you out as well. More choices, more options. And remember, they've got surgical and non-surgical options for sleep apnea, snoring, sinus infections, allergy stuff that other places just don't have. This is the place you want to check out. And it's a great central location for you Austin folk. It's right there at Palmer and Mopac. Even I know where that is. So go check them out. 601-0303 or go to sinussnoringent.com. Feel clear, rested, and healthy with Sinus and Snoring Specialists. All right, let me scan the chat here just to make sure. I'm not sure what this is for in general, but you get no credit, chat. Yeah, no credit. No credit for the Turntine thing because the Ojo thing happened. I understand. I understand. And Craig reiterates, yes, you get all the blame for, you can put it on me. Put it on me. It was absolutely crazy. Just a wild sequence there with Ojo going to Tech, the agent throwing it out. And what does that mean? There's such a boldness of that. And we'll continue to talk about how you, the Texas fans, are reacting to this story. But I do think there's a lot of good realism among Texas fans. I always say you guys can be realistic, sometimes too realistic, but you can be very realistic in your reactions. You don't automatically just flip out and break stuff. And part of this reaction would be, wait a second, based on what you're seeing, based on the grading, based on that. I know it's one day at a camp, but based on something like that. And then based on this information that Ketch went through, again, go to that QR code up there. JoinOrangeBloods.com today if you haven't. It's a perfect time to do it. You're less than 60 days from kickoff. You're going to get all the great coverage, all the war rooms on Thursday. But every Sunday, going to get 10 thoughts from the weekend from Ketch and the Sunday pulpit from Anwar, just to mention a couple things. And Ketch really breaks it down for you about a guy this tall and a guy that weighs what he weighs. How many of those have worked out over time? Obviously, one individual guy can be a superstar and be a stud, but the numbers do speak pretty loudly as to what that is. And the fact that there's been one guy in basically the last 20 years is crazy to think of. But that's the kind of stuff that Ketch digs into on orangebloods.com that you are going to want to check out. It's going to be really, really, an interesting thing to follow, both sides of it. What does Texas do now? But then to our point also, what Texas does with there's two different shows today. If you're a Texas show today, it's what do you do with the Ojo money? And we've discussed that. What kind of different things maybe you do? But then on the other side, and I was going to give Ketch a buy or sell about one of my ideas was, do you just sweeten up Jamarion Carlton? That's coming up this week. Carlton, Lamar Brown. Is it one of those two guys? Do you just think of it as, hey, take that money? You don't have to say it directly like that to the kid, but prepare to sweeten the deal for one of them. Is it both of them? Do you believe in both of them that good? One guy coming off the edge, one guy at D tackle. Are they that badass? Sark, are they that badass? Because I'm seeing them rated as the number 4 edge in the country and the number 2 athlete. Lamar Brown is so freaky. He's an athlete at defensive line. If they're that good, split that. Maybe it's not split it right down the middle. I'm not saying split $5 million, but split something. Pick an amount of money. Say we'll split that with these two. Then we'll use the rest of the money somewhere else. It's just a thought. Just a thought. Maybe there's another guy coming down the line. Is it, well, I don't know, tomorrow, Jalen Lott, is he that good? Number 3 athlete in the country, according to Rivals from Panther Creek. That guy, a little bit of a legacy story too? Yeah. What about him? Wide receiver to catch his point instead of going offensive line, go for something right now and something that could help you. And although with the pass catchers you've got, is he a guy that really plugs in? I don't know. You'd have to make that choice, but maybe that's a decision, that you want to look at. JW Crunch says Texas fans are realists, not like some crazy fans. North and far, maybe in farther north. Yeah, no, not like those fans. You're right. Not like those fans. You guys are definitely a little more real than those. All right, one more of our great partners to thank before I get out of here. On my week off, I did have a couple of good pork chops, but kids, I didn't have anything better than this. This is the pork chop at Hayes City Store. It was calling my name, even though I had some good, they were good. Don't get me wrong. Good, maybe even to really good pork chops over the last week or so. But not like this. They've got the blackened pork chop, which is what you see here. They've got a grilled pork chop, which is unbelievable. And it can't, I say it can't be beat. They're all different. They all have a different vibe depending on what you look for, but they're all just incredible. I prefer the blackened overall. This is my favorite probably, but the grilled is amazing. Melts in your mouth. And then the chicken fried pork chop that they do. Just amazing if you're into that kind of thing. So always remember that the unsung hero at a restaurant can be the pork chop. And boy, is that true at Hayes City Store. FM 150 out in Driftwood. Tell Travis, Tamara, and the crew that we sent you out there. It is so, so good at Hayes City Store. All right. Let's see. Before we roll, I think that might be it. I think we got all the super chats real quick too. Before I sign off, just the thoughts, the prayers, and everything going out to those families in Central Texas dealing with the flooding. I ended up, it was just a weird circumstance, but I was in Bandera last week, which is about 35 miles south of Kerrville. A couple people in our group went to Kerrville a couple times, 2 or 3 times during the week and hit a gym and worked out. I've been to Kerrville for vacations before. There's a really cool spot that we've hit there a couple times. I've driven by those camps over and over again. And we were making plans, actually. We thought about going to the fireworks show that Friday night. And even before Friday, we kind of decided, man, maybe we'll hang here. But just a horrific story to watch play out. And we're literally, we're south of it. We watched the river where we were near the Medina River. It went from dry to raging and just giant, trees and logs and barrels going down the river. It went from one to the other in 30 minutes on Friday afternoon. And that was well after everything had, gotten going. It was Friday, probably about 5 PM by the time that river rose. I can't imagine what all those folks are going through. I know there's at least one Orange Bloods poster that posted about identifying his child. Just awful stuff. So thinking about all those people, it was just such a wild story. And Stupesified, yes, absolutely. Just prayers going out to all those people. And also the uplifting stories that always seem to come out of the tragedies. I try to grab onto some of those too. All those people flying helicopters, the people in boats, the law enforcement and military folks that are going in there and searching for people. The teenage girl that I saw that was floating downstream, grabbed onto a tree and held on for 12 hours, stayed in a tree for 12 hours until they found her And there are lots of stories there are hundreds of stories like that of kids getting rescued, adults getting rescued, but obviously there were deaths too. And it's just an awful thing to think about. The horror of all horrors for parents that you're leaving your child at a camp, at something that's designed to be so much fun and that they've done maybe many times before. And then it ends up like that. So just terrible stuff. It's a 4th of July that'll obviously, the whole state of Texas and maybe further out will never forget. So just all kinds of thoughts going out to those people as they continue to go through it. We're praying for them and hoping for not too much more rain this week. Maybe things can dry out a little bit and maybe kind of get back to normal. All right. Thank you guys for jumping in. Orange Bloods Live. Check out all the great content that is coming. We will be back to a semi kind of regular stuff this week, but there's always crazy stuff going on. Tomorrow is the Jalen Lott decision. Thursday is Jamarion Carlton and Lamar Brown. Again, I'll be out Thursday and Friday getting the kid to orientation for college, but Catch, Jason, the crew, they're going to have everything for you on those decisions on Thursday with those 2 big defensive guys. Tomorrow, we'll be dealing with Jalen Lott. Wednesday, we'll have the recruiting hour brought to you by Longhorn Wealth Management Group. Jason will be breaking down everything that happened. Obviously, we'll get his reaction on Ojo and everything, but also previewing those guys on Thursday. And does he think Texas can get either Carlton or Brown or both? So all that's coming this week. Thank you guys for supporting, almost 800 of you in the Specs chat as we get ready to close. Great to be back and great to be talking to you guys. Hope you have a great Monday. Take care of yourselves and we will talk soon. Tomorrow, it's the noon modcast. I think Jason and Anwar will be jumping in and we'll get some thoughts from both of those guys on what is going on with recruiting. And it will be Jalen Lott's day to make his decision. So we'll get the latest information that Jason's got on that. So be sure to join us at noon tomorrow. Until then, y'all take care. It's Orange Bloods Live.